yourself with a reality. It's a dream, aren't you? A dream or reality. We're all a part of the answer to the meaning of it all. Trying to join us for the moment we call now. Rise up, join in, raise the whole vibration.
Yes, welcome to the live stream of consciousness. Surprise! It's a Friday. It's not a Thursday. I know I'm usually live on Thursdays, but I've decided through amazing circumstances I'm recording an episode for Thursday, but I decided to do it live and share it with you guys because I'm just really excited about it. Energetically, I think it's going to be an important one. My guest is a humanitarian of unimagined proportions. I mean, I've been doing a little bit of research about his accomplishments and the things that he's involved in, and it's a true honor to have been graced with his presence and the idea that I can even have this conversation. So here I am live. Tim, thank you very much for coming here and hashtagging live. If you are watching this, if it's Friday, May 16th, hashtag live. Even if it's Thursday and you're watching it, even though it's going to be pre-recorded on Thursday, hashtag live helps tickle the algorithm, let the algorithm know that people are watching and that other people might be interested, and that will help grow this community. So I first heard of my guest, Sacha Stone, through Carolina Luna, who has been on the show before, also a good friend of mine, very heart-centered person, doing a lot of great things. And, that's what this show is all about, that good energy, that good intention, that being aware of where you are at any moment. Sacha did a event at her place and is just on this incredible mission. I don't love that word, but has this great purpose in life, just to raise the vibration, exactly what I'm trying to do here. And he's been doing it very, very successfully for many years on, like I said, levels that I'm excited to talk about. So before I even start babbling, let me welcome to the show, without further ado, Sacha Stone. How are you doing, Sacha?
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you for your kind words, Michael. Good to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I feel like, everybody's got their piece of the puzzle, right? And that's something that I talk about here all of the time. I have guests on to hold up their piece of the puzzle so we can all see, oh, does that fit with mine? Where does it go? Let's see a little bit more of the picture as we zoom out. And I feel like your puzzle piece is one of those pieces that, like, somebody might have a bunch of pieces together in an area, but it's that one piece that you put right in there, and all of a sudden the picture starts to become clearer. So not that anybody's puzzle piece is more important than anybody else's, but I feel like your puzzle piece is like a key that will help kind of open up people's eyes to the big picture.
Well, there's a lifetime of irreverence and belligerence for you. That's what it leads
to. Absolutely. You know what? I actually, that was one of the last things I found out about you as I was doing my research, is that you're a former musician, kind of rock star, which is cool because I'm a musician as well. And I feel like music is such a pure, energetic channel, right? To just connect to yourself and connect to the universe and just understand, the idea of channeling. I didn't even know, that when I was 18 years old playing music, that I was channeling until, I was 40 years old and I understood what that even meant.
Yeah, if music is appointed in the appropriate way, then I would agree with you. But as you must well know, and look no further than than Puff Daddy and the trial that's on at the moment, to understand that music is also something which has been, a utility of the devil in a sense.
Sure.
So it's both ways.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that could be said about, most mainstream communication, right? Is it's been kind of commandeered, and there's you really got to be discerning with what energies you let in and how you perceive it. I think it's great. And I see Hat Pals are out there, Ascending Fractal Wonder. Good to see you. Yeah, I think that, again, this is why I'm excited about this conversation. I feel like you have a really good way of presenting these ideas where people can understand. And I love the idea of awareness and intention, and people kind of starting to be accountable, for their own actions, where I think for many, many years, society piles these layers of conditions on you, and you don't even realize that you're kind of doing these things. And I know you're a big proponent of that. People are kind of really blind to their own participation, in the things that are maybe not so righteous. Although I think we do our best to be righteous. But I want to kind of start off. This is the live stream of consciousness, and the first question I always ask my guests, it's a broad one, but I love it because there's no wrong answer, and that is, what are we even talking about? What is consciousness?
I think there's certain things that I think really are best treated as ineffable, that one ought not to go there. I mean, consciousness, I think, is just one of those things. Consciousness is obviously the stream of self-reflecting God in a self-reflecting, self-fulfilling, self-realizing, realizing immanent, universal gestalt. We could really twist and turn it any way we like to, but consciousness is, in that sense, the all. The fun bit is understanding that consciousness exists in rocks, in granite, and in vegetables and in plants. We now know that scientifically. It's forensically evidenced that plants have consciousness and that stone has consciousness, and certainly diamonds and crystal, silica, the entire planet, if you look at the inner workings of this planet, is a colossal fractal and a dielectric paramagnetic capacitor of God force and of eternal witness. So we can talk about consciousness in almost any direction and make a very valid argument for it being what it is, a self-realizing, self-fulfilling, self-existing principle.
Sacha, I love that answer. I love the idea that, you're like, well, wait a second, it's ineffable, like, how do you want me to answer that question? And I mean, again, that's as valid as anybody trying to kind of take their perception and put it into a definition, right? And so I love that answer, and I agree with it, and I do think it's a part of the big answer. That's awesome. So the next question that I usually ask my guests is, if you have a specific moment, and I don't know if you do, but you've been doing this for so long, or a story that you can share where it was like that realization. Okay, I was born as a 3D, entity, but there's more to it than just this meat suit kind of part of me. Is there a moment that you can remember that, that kind of became clear, or did it just always feel that way to you?
It's a difficult one for me because my childhood was not a fun childhood. I grew up in a war in Africa, and I was kind of yanked off my mother's tit far too young, and set behind grenade screens and security screens and military convoys, and living really in that sense. I was in a state of deep anxiety and early onset trauma complex at the age of 6. So 6-7 years of age was for me when it really came to roost that that this world was really the trial of separation. This was really, how does one navigate this separation, the great divide between oneself and one's own higher authority, because you're being cajoled and bullied and coerced by authorities outside of yourself. Separation from one's own family, one's mother, because in my case the war was underway and we were in a very distraught, high security situation, and just trying to stay alive through those years. So for me, I became probably far too young to cogitate those things, but I started to reckon that this world was all about the trial of separation. And, here goes, this is not going to be a fun ride entirely. Whereas now in my middle age, I look and I see how easy it is for us to be able to bring babes into this world and program them in the other direction, that this life is limitless and affirmative, bountiful and beautiful and ecstatic, and joyful and adventurous and exciting and enthralling and enchanting. And I could go on. That's how we should be programming our children about the road that lies ahead, because how we program them is what sets their expectations. As they set their expectations, that activates their kundalini, their life force rising. That activates the pineal function, which is really where the plasma projection of the imagined world moves into the manifest world, and we literally manifest our realities. So if we're serious about being goodly, godly, judicious, righteous people in this world, then let's stop programming the trial of separation into our babes. Let's not put them through this godless mill of education as it's commonly understood today, which is an abomination to God and to man and to reason, and start to step away from this false light construct of a world based entirely on third-party intervention, where we are not our own guardians, where we are not our own authority, where we are not our own custodians or navigators. That must end. So the reckoning with self should be a beautiful experience made at a very young age, where we begin to project ourselves into this world as children of God and manifest patterns of perfection into this realm. So that for me, it was 5 to 6. And I'm very clear. I have a memory that goes back to 6 months of age, very crystal clear memory from being in a carry cot, years earlier than when I was 6. But 6 was when I remember clutching the security fences late at night at a boarding school in the middle of the bush in Africa, and my heart breaking and wailing for my mother, for my father, for my anyone out there, and knowing that was an entire world apart that I didn't know if and when that would ever return. So being completely cut off from any sense of sanctuary, that was the age of 6 for me, for sure.
Wow. And was there any sort of I don't know if the right tool is the right word, or how did you deal with that? Like, in other words, like, did you bring yourself out of body to to kind of cope with that? I mean, at 6 you realized that there was this separation. So what was that like?
I don't know how you cope. I began at that time retreating into a kind of inner scape, as many children do. And I started to try to organize my inner scape in accordance with mathematics, curiously enough. So I became very odd, really from the age of 9 to, I'd say 9 to 14, 15. I think I became very, very odd because I started to genuflect a lot, and I had terrible twitches, and I couldn't walk across a room without walking in different ways and touching my, it's just, I became very, looking at me from the outside, you would say I was clinically unwell and needed to be treated. And in fact, I was put under a certain observance, put it that way, by the education authorities. But that had a fair bit to do with the fact that I had a very good IQ and that I was clearly not stupid. But why the weird behavior? This was all came out later in life when I was about 16 or 17. And my mother said, the reason why you were observed by government observers, even in boarding schools in the middle of a bush war, was because you had a good brain, you had a good IQ, and probably I was being, as in all governments, I think when kids get very high marks, they get designated and, in a sense, targeted by the system, and then ultimately get segued into special universities and what have you.
Right.
I know in the 70s, certainly that was de rigueur, that was happening around the world, probably an offshoot of the old CIA, MK programs of designating certain children and then fast tracking them into government sponsored programs to be part of the order of things. but I know that I looked odd from the outside, but everything was working on the inside. I was simply trying to, I guess, trying to still the storm on the inside. And the only way I could do it was using mathematics and thinking in terms of mathematics. But it wasn't. It was
Wow.
clashing. It was clashing with the perceived reality for sure. And so the net result was that I was an oddball for a few years as a
Wow.
young. Yeah.
So that's really interesting, because I've been kind of dancing around the idea of mathematics, right, as part of a universal code. And I believe recently I heard Penrose, a mathematician, who said, we didn't invent mathematics, we discovered it. We kind of, it exists, and we discovered it. And I feel like that's kind of what you're saying. You were able to kind of tune into that frequency.
Yeah,
at that
there's
age.
no question about that. Yes, thank you for that, for elucidation. And you're right. Math is the language of God in that sense, and it's self-existing. And one can tap into it and write it, and it becomes a limitless universe or multiverse of extraordinary equations and principles and geometry. And it's a profoundly beautiful thing to lose oneself in a sense, because if one can organize the inner verse, the geometry of the inner landscape can be organized. You then open your eyes and look out, you see bullets flying and people dying in a horrible world of war. And that's an ugly, false light construct. But when you shut your eyes and go within, again, to that innerscape, that inner verse, you can make sense of it through the language of God. And certainly I was doing that as a child. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And interesting question. I see a question from the chat room. Do you feel psychedelics helped you on your journey? Now, I don't even know if that was a part of your journey. I didn't really get into that too much.
I've never puffed marijuana. I've never touched alcohol. I've never chewed a magic mushroom in my life. So I'm afraid I have a
No.
very boring and very dry and very sober.
No need to apologize for something like that. I also, I have a lot of friends and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'm certainly intrigued by stories of DMT and ayahuasca and how they relate to, kind of connecting people to source or what they might perceive as it. But I personally have never been called to do that myself. And so I don't
say, Michael, I'd say that I'm very schooled in the subject, so I can wax lyrical on the subject of Santo Daime and ayahuasca and LSD and all of these various medicines, some of which are synthetic, others which are very organic and very earth-based. I've conducted studies myself of this stuff. With my foundation Humanitad for years, and many years ago was working with so-called shaman and ayahuasca masters and what have you, and many of them, not just, and it wasn't for shits and giggles. We were literally working with ayahuasca and Santo Daime masters in scientific experiments that we were conducting in the laboratory, and remote viewing and things like that. So I've got a pretty rich history of weird science in my foundation going back many years, and I can tell you I have a huge reverence and respect for what you'd loosely call earth medicines. I'm not that fond of synthetic molecules. I deem the synthetic molecule to be the source code of the kingdom of the devil. And I certainly know that in the last 100 years, since the kind of Rockefeller convention weaponized medicine and then weaponized the soil and the water and the air, through synthetics and agrochemical industries, petrochemical industries, and a big pharmaceutical industry prevailing. Those were the horns of the devil extant in the world that began the systemic poisoning of all living systems. And we're at that precipitous stage now where there's such a diabolical confluence of systemic poisoning of the planetary biome that we're all of us carrying cancers. We're all of us dying of ailments, of sicknesses, and the world is at war with itself, but at that nano level. Now, by the grace of the living God, Bobby Kennedy and Donald Trump are slaying that particular Leviathan, which to my mind is the single greatest advancement we've made as a civilization since since the good man of Nazareth, 2,000 odd years ago.
Hmm.
This is huge. This is epochal what's happening right now, and just in the last few weeks alone, the takedown of this Leviathan in Washington is going to be so consequential to
Hmm.
ourselves, our children, and future generations.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Again, we spoke. I don't really kind of go into those things so deeply, but I guess in relationship to the current times, and where we're at, how do you feel? What do you feel is the role of the individual, right? So let's not talk about elite and the powers that be, so to speak, but as individuals, I think, me personally, I know my journey has been amazing to self-love and awareness, and kind of the idea that everything that I need is inside of me, understanding my relationship to the things outside of me, and how to navigate that. I do feel like, it's makes me happy to see this contingency of people becoming more self-aware and more self-loving, but there's also, I believe, a contingency of people who are becoming less self-loving and clinging on to some of the old paradigms. Where do you feel we're at, and what is the role of the individual in this moment?
Well, it's a very interesting question, because it's a reductive question, but it's a very interesting one. The individual, in that sense, is all, in as much as the flaming of the morphogenetic grid, or the flaming of the collective heart of humanity,
Mhm.
which is to say, the ascension event is underway. We're certainly certainly at the early onset stage of planetary ascension. And that, again, can be demonstrated or proven forensically if you study the astrophysics of
Mhm.
light and geometry of where we're at in the solar system, in this quadrant of the universe, and the vibral light which is impacting us, and so on, at the subatomic level. So we know about that. We know that there is a huge upshift occurring. We know that Babylon is falling. We know that the priest banker class of comptrollers of humanity are moving into a dissolution, which is to say, government is in dissolution, the Catholic Church is in dissolution.
Mhm.
All monotheistic religious edifices are, in that sense, now beginning to disassemble, which is an obvious thing, a very needful rite of passage in our planetary evolution. That's all underway. You asked the question, where is the individual in all of that?
Mhm.
Well, without the activated or actualized individuals in our midst, none of that would be happening.
Mhm.
And you cannot be an actualized individual if you've got one foot in the door of mistruth and you're still dealing in half truths. So for me, pure truth and right action is the only way that we should be conducting ourselves, because you're either part of that solution or you're part of the problem in that sense. The fact of the matter is that, and I will preface again by saying, by the grace of the living God, we are, because I have no regard for the dead God and for
Mhm.
the idolatry, the angry, jealous gods that are worshipped by most reductive and pedestrian people. But by the grace of the living God, that shift is underway, and sufficient individuals have actualized, sufficient to activate that collective morphogenetic flaming. So that's underway already. We're seeing it on almost on a weekly and daily basis right now. But that's
Mhm.
what this year 2025 was ever prophesied to represent.
Mhm.
It is the shift point and the axis point in that sense. I just urge people to have the courage to enter pure truth and not partial truth, because
Right.
partial truth becomes very inconsequential
Mhm.
at a given point. We get dragged back into a feedback loop, and we have to face the half part of the truth that we weren't looking at
Right.
until we do. And only once we're prepared to do it wholesale are we freed in that sense.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And when you say that, it makes me feel very guilty, because I, in a way, right? I mean, I also feel very aware and empowered by that, because I feel like, I exist in a certain comfort zone. You know what I mean? And I think most people do.
Yeah,
And I think you don't grow in a comfort zone, right? You grow when you're pushing yourself, or right on the edge of that comfort zone, is where you're going to grow and expand. And I see some comments here. Uh, Clue Christine says, "I'm in wonderment of our most beautiful future with these chains off of humanity," and that's the philosophy and what I like to subscribe to as well. Seeing this in a beautiful light, where you can also see it in historically, like it's kind of scary right now, right? There's a lot of things going down. You talk about this crumbling of these institutions that have been around for all of our lives, that we're used to those kind of being almost the foundations. So our foundations are being torn out from underneath us now. Again, I like to see that in, okay, it's an opportunity for a new fresh start, because I think we obviously need it. It's like you said, we've been kind of under this diabolical lore for a long time. And so again, one of the things that we were talking about before we went live, is that I really admire about you is you're not just out there preaching fear, saying all of these things that they're doing against you. You're actually doing something about it. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the future that you see and how you would like to kind of be an active part of it, right? And have all of us be an active part of it.
So, without wanting to sound pedantic, in order to be any kind of change and of any real relevancy, we have to unpeg ourselves from the notion of the future. The future is a nonsense, and always was a nonsense, just as the past cripples us with distortions and unrealized potentials. So we have to begin to collect our sanity and our reason into the living, immanent moment, which is the here and now, the living testament, the living witness, the I am. We all pretend at that with our mystical notions in our religious beliefs and what have you. But how many of us live in that way and really bring everything and pass everything back to here and now, the living moment? How can I be of relevancy, of consequence? Making plans for the future doesn't matter. How you answer the door when someone knocks at the door, how you interface with somebody at the grocery store, how you interact with somebody who's cutting you up in traffic, is a classic case in point. The mundane, the moments of the mundane moments in life are where we're truly challenged, and where our character and all too often our nature are forced into a reckoning with the I am. And so it's important, I think, just to spend every moment in that state of kind of self-reflection and just being aware of how one is navigating life, suspending all judgments, summarily, is crucial to enlightenment. There is no possibility of firing up higher chains of synapses in your mind unless you are prepared to suspend judgment, withdraw all judgment, and begin to see that everything that manifests in your life is manifesting as a divinely anointed and divinely appointed geometry in diametric proportion to the degree to which you are calling for that geometry to emerge. So I am the progenitor, I am the creator, I am the witness, I am the navigator, I am the lead man, I am the conductor of the symphony. When one takes that kind of responsibility of one's theater, one's theatrical production in life, and then owns it fully, you then return to innocence, and you flame the heart, and you become telepathically and psionically connected with the greater universal mind, whereupon you don't need to read books to get stimulus. You don't need to have thousands of conversations with random people in order to learn. The wisdom flame is the Akashic field, is the universal field that you tap into. I've not read a book in 25 years.
Wow.
I refuse to read books. I will not read any books. I stopped reading in 1997, 98. So that's longer than 25 years ago.
Wow.
I read a single book in that time. And I don't want to read books. I want to increasingly dial my the perspicacity of this mind. I want to dial it into field intelligence.
Mhm.
And I also want to dial it into living conversations with the living men and women of the living soil. So
Mhm.
that's the pursuit that I've been on for a long time. And I
Mhm.
engage conversations. So I'm very learned in many, many areas, precisely because I'm inquiring, I'm asking questions, I'm learning, I'm genuinely interested, and I'm
Mhm.
looking into life, and I'm not playing victim, and I'm not trying to strategize from behind twitching curtains or behind a digital keyboard. I'm out there in the trenches, in the mud, getting punched in the face all too often, but
Mhm.
wanting to learn in real time. And I know that for me, that works because it brings with it tremendous excitement, tremendous interest, and endless curiosity.
Mhm.
More than that, it paints incredible colors onto the canvas of my life. I've
Yeah.
been over 40 countries in the last 2 years,
Wow.
and touching down in the most extraordinary places. And I'm lucky to do that, but it only happens because I'm projecting myself into that. I'm lending myself
Mhm.
possibility into those possibilities,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that is what I'm seeing creates the manifest reality. Is the
I love
question I'm asking and the degree to which I'm prepared to lean into adventure.
I, man, you are so talking my language. I love everything you're saying, and I'm getting chills because literally here we are live because of that philosophy, right? I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to go live, but it's like, what do you mean? This is the moment. This is where you create reality. And here we are creating reality, and 150 people here agreeing with us, kind of all contributing their energy to be here, to know, okay, we've got a common goal, we've got a common vibration that we want to kind of sit on, and enjoy together.
Well,
So
even if we don't have a common goal, we should still be enjoying it. And that's the point I'm trying to make is
yeah.
let's not try to all unify consciousness. That'll happen as part of a fractal, part of a fractal harmonium will ultimately nest the geometry of all of our souls into unity consciousness. But the notion that we can push ourselves into that geometry is nonsensical. So I really welcome disparity. I welcome divergence. I welcome completely different, as long as we are not causing injury to one another, which is to say, we're not condemning or judging one another. We're simply listening and learning and
Yeah.
delighting in that diversity. Yeah.
It's again amazing because I really feel you speaking to me, and I've said that in the last couple of months how I really enjoy adversity, right? Like being put in a situation where now you have no choice but to navigate through that situation, and then be able to reflect on how you did.
Yes.
You know what I mean, and where your intentions were. Like I did a public speaking thing at a place, and a minute before I had to start speaking, the PA died. And it was like, do I not go on? And I said, no, I'm going to just speak without the PA. And I threw out my voice, but I did it and loved every minute of it. It was that thrill of being outside of your comfort zone, and knowing that the moment that you're in is expanding your consciousness, expanding your essence.
Well, certainly when we have the courage to be fully present as the living witness, as the I am in that given moment, that is true. Which, I mean, that's why I don't prepare for anything
Yeah.
now. I never prepare notes for anything. And I will get on stage for 3 hours, or I'll get on stage for 3 minutes. I don't really
Right.
care. The time is immaterial. Last week I was at the Trump Doral doing the keynote at Dr. Charlie Ward's a big event, and that was asking me to speak for 30 minutes. That for me is very, very difficult. But I had to compress a 3 hour lecture into 30 minutes. So for me, it was a very interesting challenge to do that. And I did manage it, and I got a standing ovation, which is fairly normal because I know how I'm communicating with people. I know what I've learned as a craft in the last few years in what I would call communion. It's
Mhm.
not I'm not talking at people. I'm
Mhm.
genuinely communing with folks in a given space, And I pick up on people, whether it's 30 people or 300 people or 700 people or 1,200 people. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's the same phenomenon. But I agree with you. If you just have the courage to be fully present, that courage is what grants permissions for the opening of the conduit to source. And source will always, in that sense, shine on you, and spirit will move through you, and you'll speak. And the more you present yourself on that cliff's edge of uncertainty in public speaking, I've learned, the more that the graces catch you and just slip into your soul, and you can just wax lyrical in ways that you couldn't imagine. But when you're sitting trying to craft and calculate and plan what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and the cadence of your speech, I see people doing that. Even now when I'm doing conferences, I look at other speakers and I see them at breakfast in the hotel absolutely shitting themselves, and I know what they're going through. And I see fervently writing notes, and you can see their mouths moving because they're trying to formulate that first opening gambit. When
the timing and
I think you guys, you're making the biggest mistake. You should literally present yourself naked there, look at the people, beam a smile, and then stream consciousness. And you know what? If you can't parachute in and just stream consciousness, you ought not to be public speaking, as far as I'm concerned.
I love that, and you couldn't have given me a better endorsement for my show. That's why this is called the live stream of consciousness. I am a guy who I'm a photographer, I'm a videographer, like a production guy, and I never, ever, ever expected to be in front of the camera here talking to people like this, especially on this level. Sacha, you are so freaking articulate, and it's such a pleasure to talk to you. You're such an inspiration to me for what I'm doing, because I feel the importance of that, what you just said, connecting, communion, not communication, but communion. I love the idea that, in the past couple of years, I've been in the supermarket, and in an instant, I felt my reflection in every person around me. I knew I was every person around me for that flash of a moment, and experiencing those kinds of things, I feel like that's what's allowing me to relate to you and where you've been. And again, it's just such an honor to be having this conversation. So moving forward, I know you don't like to talk about the future, and that was a great thing you said. But okay, so in this moment, you are kind of creating opportunity for people to kind of join you in this accountability, right? And making these choices that are would seem really like difficult, but they're not, like choices to escape the matrix or get out of the system and go live on a farm and grow potatoes, right?
It's more sophisticated than that. It's a universe of sophistication beyond that.
Okay.
It's gentler than the lightest whisper you ever heard. At the same time, it's just about presence and being. And if you are present with your being at any vector of time or reality, you can observe the abject chaos out there of government, of society, of civilization. And you need to remedy that. We need to remedy that, unless we want to be a part of that false light realm. And the departure from that is where presence is required, to be able to say, I don't need to fill out forms with black capital letters and participate in Saturnian black magic ritualism. I don't need to sacrifice my babes to Cronus, to the crown, to the state, to the government by registering them at birth. I don't need to be registering my bicycle or my vehicle. I don't need a car driver's license. I don't need to be licensing or registering anything. To register is to offer up to Regis, to Rex the king, to literally offer up. And so as we have systemically surrendered all of our natural born rights and privileges as children of God. We have literally granted all permissions to Cronus, the crown, the state, as the third party intervener, the interloper, the intercessionary. And we have granted permissions for that third party intervention to literally steal our children from us under color of being a child protection agency, which is a trafficking entity. So these are the things that we need to look at and see in broad daylight if indeed we're serious about presence, being present and being in truth. And then asking the question, how do we uncouple? How do I uncouple from that false light matrix? How can I define a micronation? How can I define a jurisdiction for myself, my family, my friends, my community? How do we uncouple ourselves from these UCC conventions and treaties and bonds and contracts and laws and ordinances and codes and statutes, all made up by bureaucrats that don't even exist, a faceless, nebulous thing called bureaucracy, which has become our God? Well, that is an insane asylum that I've just described. My world of the new earth is not. It's where we go to land and we reconvene relationship between the sons and daughters of God and the living soil, where we cleanse the air, the water, and the soil using phase conjugate technologies and all sorts of microbiological formulas, algae. There are ways of cleansing air, water, and soil very, very quickly. We could remedy everything. The whole world could be remedied from depleted uranium, which has been in the atmosphere for the last 10,000 years or longer. We could remediate all of that in less than 10 minutes if we deployed the technologies which we have. Now, 15 years ago, when I was Director General in the United Nations, and my portfolio included renewable energy and things like cleaning up the oceans and cleaning up the oil spills and cleansing the skies from depleted uranium in Fukushima and elsewhere. We had the technologies then. I went to governments at that time as the Director General at the United Nations. Could I get those technology solutions to market? Could I? Hell, they didn't want them. Government doesn't want remedy or solutions. Government is a mindless, faceless bureaucracy that wants pensions. It wants to be able to feast on the harvest of humanity because that's how it keeps going. The wheels keep moving. So the new earth, Michael, is an entire full spectrum conscious detachment from that insane asylum. And it's not asking permission. It's not that you go knocking on the door of the local sheriff and say, oh, could I set up a sovereign community on yonder hill? You don't do that. You don't go and petition and solicit from a false light authority to do something that's in God's jurisdiction. You go and do it. Now, you have to be mindful of the idiocy and oftentimes the ignorance of neighbors and of you have to, and local customs. Obviously, you have to be very mindful and respectful of that. So that's what one does. You get involved in diplomacy and tact, and you let your light shine into the eyes of the people, the locals. They'll see that, they'll receive you, and they'll welcome what you're doing. So there's ways and ways of enforcing and ensuring the new jurisdiction of God's children. That's what the New Earth Project is. And I happen to also work at head of state level and at the level of kings and paramount chiefs with hereditary leadership. So I'm lucky that I have a 25 plus year pedigree in operating with power and with high echelon power. And so I'm not afraid of it, and I'm not cowed by it. I'm not stymied by it. I'm not enchanted by it. I just understand that that's all part of a false light function, and that we must now reclaim this world to the lost paradise. And the lost paradise is really held in the imagination of those of us who've returned to innocence, which return to our true nature. And we're not taking orders and following insane dictates from bureaucrats and technocrats and authorities outside of ourselves. And we're not worshiping false gods either, dressed up as being, Yahweh or Jehovah or whatever. So, for me, it's alpha, omega, consciousness, community, jurisdiction, technology, how we bundle all of that and then reclaim this realm, this world in the here and the now. This is not a matter of the future. It's a matter of right here, right now. And New Earth is doing that. We're doing that. We're doing that in 4 corners of the world right now, in Africa, in Asia, in Central and North America. And that will franchise and syndicate beyond all around the world in the days ahead. This is the year 2025 into 26, the axis point. As you know, in Midsummer's Day, I'm doing a big event, the New Earth consecration and proclamation of the New Earth Tennessee project, which is why I'm on tour through America right now, spreading that word. And all roads lead away from Rome now to Tennessee. Tennessee was the name, the Cherokee name for Tennessee before it was turned into Tennessee. So we've got land. We've bought beautiful, the most stunning land. I'm there right now in Tennessee, and we're returning that land back to the First Nation peoples of the world, back to the original land patterns of the indigenous people, going back 1,500 years. We're breaking through the war powers and the corporate fiction and handing the land totemistically back to the First Nation peoples of the world. So His Majesty King Edmund Silver Jr., the sovereign king of the Kingdom of Hawaii, Hereditary Chief Phil Lane Jr., the Hopi, Chief Sabrina Whitehorse Barnett, a number of other hereditary leaders are coming in to meet with us here in Tennessee on Midsummer. Dr. David Martin, a great hero of our age and a long-standing friend and colleague of mine, is coming in with Kim Martin to do the 12 senses. Laura Eisenhower is coming in, a granddaughter of Ike, and she's coming in to also conduct a workshop and participate in the ceremonial stuff that we're doing. We've got a lot of Scott McKay, the Patriot Street Fighter legend, coming in with his tour buses. We're going to have a lot of fun for 3 days in consecrating and returning this piece of Middle America back to the First Nation peoples. There'll be a cascade energetically from that event, and there'll be a proclamation event that goes out around the world. Believe me, around the world. We have millions of people looking into what we'll be doing Midsummer in Tennessee. And any of your audience are interested, they should definitely reach out to you or to me, and we'll let them know where they might be able to convene with this piece of history that's happening in Midsummer. But I'll be in your part of the world. I think Long Island, Manhattan, I think the Hamptons, and
cool. Yeah, I think I think the dates I was given, May 31st, you'll be in Manhattan, and I believe June 6th you'll be here on Long Island. I'm excited to meet you in person for that date. I will definitely be there, and I'm really excited. I feel really honored. When Carolina, kind of said, "Oh, you should have Sacha on your show," I had no idea of the depth of the roots that you have in this moment. And how important you are. So again, thank you so much for your time and your presence and this conversation, which is my heart is beaming. I'm just so I'm so happy that there's somebody of your caliber and your experience and your what's the right word I'm looking for? You've been in these positions where you've garnered this respect and credibility to now what you're doing is not fringe. It's being accepted.
It's mainstream. You're absolutely right to say that, Michael, and I thank you for it. And as people on my tour know, I just returned from 3 weeks in Central Africa, where I was meeting the Litunga, the King of Kings of Central Africa, meeting with government officials, cabinet ministers in different parts of Africa. I don't want to say where right now because it's politically very sensitive, but I'm working at very high level in Africa right now to establish the first ever nation that will be birthed as an act of peace, not as an act of war. So New Earth Nation proper is going to be birthed in Africa. It's with very considerable land holdings, and it will be emerging as an act of peace treated by multilateral treaty and then forced onto the General Assembly floor at the United Nations. Of course, I know how to navigate those spaces.
Awesome.
But we will be birthing New Earth as a full-fledged, full-spectrum nation with sovereign banking and its own ability to conduct a high-end political interfacing and diplomacy on the world stage, which is not really where I want to take it, but it's about us in a sense, reclaiming the
Mhm.
world for humanity. And
Mhm.
it's a sequence of living principles.
Sure.
Um, and the resurrection of ancestral blood song is part of that. The reclamation of health sovereignty is absolutely integral to that. And
Mm.
so it goes on. I see that um, uh, one of the audience here, who is a wonderful woman, Laurel Kitten. Please, you must contact me. She's somebody I'm looking forward to speaking to, and she just corrected me and
Oh,
saying that it was Laura Eisenhower's the granddaughter of President Eisenhower, not Ike. Correct. I didn't mean that. I was trying to get to that. Thank you for the correction. So Laura is the granddaughter of President Eisenhower,
wow.
and will be coming in to the event as well. So
Awesome.
it's going to be a pretty historic piece. We're running a 3-day retreat. There's a full 2 days of workshop, then eight fire ceremony conducted on the evening of the 20th at a big ceremonial ground, which we're preparing in the land that we purchased and will be handing over to the First Nation peoples of the world. And then King Edmund and Chief Phil and the other elders and leaders will be making proclamation on the 21st, which is Midsummer's Day proper. And that's going to be a live stream broadcast to the world. But the people in attendance, we anticipate anything up to 300-400 people. They will be absolutely witnessing a piece of history in the heart of Middle America. And
Awesome. I love it. I feel it. I totally feel it. Like I said, I feel like I had no idea what I was stepping into with this opportunity to speak to you. And now I'm so excited to dig into all of the information on New Earth, which I was starting to look at today. And I know me and my partner, my girl, we're like, where can we go? Like, where do we go to live the way we want to live? And this sounds like the utopia. And I also love that you're like, yeah, I'm not really interested in being a nation and all of this official stuff, but understanding kind of the importance of gathering those numbers and gathering that credibility just by being, just by existing. It will be obvious what you're doing, I think, and energetically,
yes, and one has to be guarded against interposition. So you want to claim jurisdiction and have a no flyover zone and be protected by international law and by multilateral treaties. That for me is easy to knock together. And we're in the process of doing that right now. I will expect to have announcements later this year, certainly no later than the first quarter of next year on that. But just envision a nation that is birthed with a perfect circle as its border, no straight lines. It's representing the emergence of the feminine.
So
It's
cool.
the square, and it's the first nation on earth ever constituted as an act of peace, not as an act of war. That is how we turn the circle, turn the wheel in the other direction.
God bless you, Sacha. That is just phenomenal to hear, to be in the presence of. I feel like it's big. I'm vibrating. And I feel a lot of the people in the audience also are just really, really receiving this. And that's really what this is all about. The live stream of consciousness is my way of transmitting my energy and receiving the energy back very intentionally. You know what I mean? And that's what I think we've definitely accomplished tonight. I'm flabbergasted. I really am.
Look forward to seeing you in Long Island, and greatly look forward to it.
Absolutely. And I did notice in the audience we have Gemma Starr, who is a wonderful interviewer as well. I was on her show, and as I saw her in here, I'm like, oh, that's where I saw your name probably like 2 years ago, because we had an interview.
She's a dear friend, very dear friend.
She's amazing. And again, it's so great to kind of come across and bring into the vortex other people who are kind of, have found this purpose in life to just love unconditionally, to the point where humanity will ascend from that vibration.
Yes.
And I think that's what we're doing here, which is great. I really, really appreciate it. I don't want to take up any more of your time. We've been talking for over an hour. You're amazing. I guess it's the opportunity to just give some parting words to the audience. If you have anything specific that you want to say, your website's down there at the bottom. So if anybody's interested in the New Earth.
Yeah, that's not the website, but it is
Oh.
tour at Sacha. Oh, sorry, on on yours it is. On my nameplate here, it says tour at sachastone.com. If anyone wants tickets to RSV tickets on the tour or to get tour details, write to tour at sachastone.com, and my producer will get back to you and reserve tickets. Again, it's a free tour. I don't charge for my speaking. So just turn up. It'll always be limited, but just that's why we insist on RSVPs. So we make sure that there are enough seats to accommodate people.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. I want to put you in the green room, but I would love to ask you to just hang out for a minute so we can speak after I sign off the show.
Sure.
And thank you so much.
Let me just say good night to my Edie Cooper, who's there, and my beloved Dara, Akasha, and also to Gemma. Thank you.
Awesome. Give me 1 second. I just want to set this up. All right, Sacha, thank you so much. I will see you soon. Oh man, guys, how incredible was that? I think I often leave episodes going, wow, that was my favorite episode, but this really topped them all. Thank you, Sacha, so much for being here. I do want to also take this opportunity, I guess, just to say, if you like what you saw here, this is what I do. This is what I'm here for. I have amazing guests that I just love to talk about consciousness and why we're here and how to navigate this world without judgment and love each other and raise the vibration. That's what I love to do. I'm also working on a living book is what I'm calling it. And it's really relevant. It's called You Are the Answer. I'm going to share it right here. It's a Facebook group, and it's really a book in the style of Douglas Adams, a little bit of humor to it. And it's all about what's the answer? Why are we here? Well, the answer to why we're here is different for everybody. And the answer is you. You're why you are here. You are why you are here. So be you. Find the things that light your fire, like Bashar says, and just be you. Be the best you that you can. Again, thank you to Sacha Stone. This is going to be replayed on Thursday, the 22nd. So if you missed it, you can see it again there. It'll probably also be on the archive on the YouTube channel. Until next week, I will see you guys. Peace.
Gotta ask yourself whether reality is a dream or you a dream or reality. We're all a part of the answer to the meaning of it all. Trying to join us.